55-year-old retired schoolteacher Betsy Mayer is finally able to enjoy a trip away from home in Skagway, Alaska, taking a cruise on the Great Lakes. Away from her husband and 2 teenage daughters, she's looking forward to a family reunion in Cleveland. But things are about to take a sudden turn for the worst that will end up leaving her family in shock and searching for answers. After this night, Betsy will never be seen alive again. The culprit tosses the cell phone overboard, as well as the body of Betsy Mayer. Was it a robbery gone wrong? Murder by a jealous rival? Who would want to hurt a former schoolteacher whom everyone loved so dearly? Another cruise ship sets sail on a 7-day voyage of the Great Lakes, docking at various lakeside ports along the way. For Betsy Mayer, this is what she's been waiting for: time alone to reflect, along with the excitement to reach her final destination of Cleveland for a long-awaited family reunion. But for now, she's cruising along with 400 other passengers on North America's largest freshwater lakes.
She was talking about doing this trip around the Great Lakes, then going to family reunion, and it was just so her, always trying to make an event even bigger and more memorable.
Her decision to enjoy a leisurely trip and travel alone is something she's never done before. She has also never explored the Great Lakes area, nor taken a cruise. It's a trip of many firsts. Unfortunately, this decision will end up costing her dearly.
Betsy's kind of getting tired of teaching. She loves it, but it's been a long time, and she really wants to pursue her career as an artist. She wants to make that less of a hobby, more of a career.
As a teacher, Betsy Mayer is well respected by peers and loved by her students. Known to be firm but fair, she enjoys sharing her enthusiasm and love of learning. She is also an accomplished artist, encouraging her students to do the same. Being married and making a living as a teacher over the long term has afforded her another hobby: collecting an assortment of expensive vintage jewelry.
She was a very unique person. She loved the past and everything of which it stated, even by wearing a pearl necklace, which was her favorite. She wore it all the time. You got her talking about it, she could tell you stories about who owned it and where she got it, and it really brought a light to her.
But these days, Betsy feels her daughters are old enough that they no longer need her to be at home full time. And she tries to decide what direction the next chapter in her life should take.
The girls are getting older, so she's getting a bit of an empty nest syndrome. Like, she needs to make time for herself, do things for herself. She just can't only be a mother and a wife anymore. She needs to find something that's purely her own.
Someone who encourages her to explore and venture out on her own is Betsy's husband, Bart.
Bart was a very successful teacher, became a superintendent, but then eventually he actually took a huge turn in his career and became a U.S. Marshal.
She looks for the perfect opportunity to focus on what she'd like to do in her life, and it isn't long before the opportunity presents itself. Betsy decides to travel to a family reunion.
Though Betsy isn't a wealthy woman, she's always liked sparkly things. She's always really enjoyed jewelry. She's very proud of her collection, especially the string of pearls that her husband got her for their wedding anniversary. Some of her jewelry are family heirlooms that have been passed down by, say, her great-grandmother. They've been in the family for a long time, so she feels a strong sense of attachment to these items.
The big day arrives, but little does Betsy's family realize that this is the last time they'll see her alive. Betsy sends one final text off to Bart and the girls, letting them know her adventure has started and the ship is on its way. She promises to be in touch again as soon as the ship docks in Cleveland.
Working in law enforcement, Bart would have the opportunity to see the best of people and also see the worst of people. You see people at their darkest times. Betsy may not have experienced this type of environment, having been a school teacher all her adult life.
It's Betsy's first night on the cruise, and she decides to dress up and attend the formal dinner on board the ship. She enjoys looking glamorous and looks forward to meeting new people on board. She sees the night maid, Amanda, in the hallway, and not wanting to inconvenience her, she asks for fresh towels for the morning.
The first dinner at a cruise ship is when you first get to make that impression on people. So it's very important. You want to dress your best. You want to put your best face forward so everybody's getting a good impression of you. You're friendly. Fortunately for Betsy, since she's used to walking into a classroom cold and not knowing her students, this is very easy for her.
Around this time, Betsy notices an argument break out between a couple. The man seems to be drunk, and she's concerned for the lady who appears to be his wife. She decides to say something, but the man takes offense at Betsy's interjection. The night isn't going as planned, and she doesn't seem to be making any new friends aboard the ship. The next morning, Betsy relaxes on her private balcony as her room is made up. The maid discovers an earring under the bed and tells Betsy about it. She offers her thanks to the maid, who refuses a tip.
The thing with cruise ships that makes it so exciting is you get to meet people from all walks of life, different cultures, different economic statuses, different classes. So it's a chance to get to know all sorts of different people. Unfortunately, just like in life, some are good, but some aren't so good, and some people take advantage of the situation to prey on those who may be traveling alone.
Betsy finds herself interrupted by curious passengers on board. Betsy realizes this is the same couple that she saw arguing at dinner the night before. Once again, it looks like the man has already over-imbibed. 37-year-old Kevin and his wife Deirdre are on their first cruise. Unlike Betsy and her husband's relationship, Kevin and Deirdre are not on solid ground. And this is the second time Betsy has noticed Kevin's temper and drinking, both seemingly increasing from the night before. Kevin's anger with Betsy interfering bubbles over, and he reports her to a crew member. Meanwhile, not everyone working on the ship is completely honest. As the crew member settles things between Kevin and Betsy, someone decides to help themselves to some of Betsy's jewelry.
Some cruise ships may offer background checks on their employees, others may not. But a background check in and of itself doesn't guarantee that person doesn't have an unscrupulous character.
Unaware of the robbery in progress, Betsy heads over to the ship's bar, mingling with the other passengers. She meets Anthony, a man she has seen numerous times on the deck during the cruise. She starts feeling uncomfortable in his presence and begins to wonder if he's been following her. Instead of being able to spend time contemplating her future as she intended to, Betsy seems to be spending more time trying to avoid unwanted suitors. Exhausted, Betsy decides to jump in the shower and have a relaxing end to her evening. But as she gets to her room, she begins to realize that not everything is how she left it. She's missing some beloved pieces of jewelry. The last thing she wants to deal with or believe is that someone has entered her cabin and stolen from her. Betsy hopes there is some sort of mistake. Maybe someone found the piece earlier while cleaning the cabin and it was put away for safekeeping.
Currently under U.S. law, cruise ships aren't required to report thefts that are under $10,000 in value.
The response Betsy gets from Amanda is not what she was hoping for. Instead of offering help, Amanda appears to react unconcerned, saying she must have lost it while wearing it on the ship. Out of character for hospitality personnel. The next morning, Betsy decides to deal with the theft in her own way. As much as she loves Bart, she's her own person, and she doesn't want to worry him about her missing jewelry. So she decides not to let him know about it. She also doesn't officially report anything missing from her cabin with the ship's authorities. That night, Betsy decides to go out for dinner and try to forget about her missing jewelry. But in the back of her mind, she's still nervous about leaving her cabin unattended. Her imagination gets the better of her. She decides to retire to her cabin early. She has a plan to figure out who robbed her. And Betsy's hunch for the burglar returning to the scene of the crime seems to pay off.
Investigating a crime against you, yourself, is not always the best idea. You never know who you're going to come in contact with, should you actually find somebody responsible for it. Your best course of action is always to alert the authorities and let them handle that type of investigation.
Confronting the thief on her own turns into a deadly decision. Betsy Mayer decides to take a vacation by herself on her way to a family reunion in Cleveland. But she's about to get more than she bargained for, including confrontations with other passengers on the ship and some missing items from her cabin. She wants to deal with things on her own, and so Betsy sets up a trap for the jewel thief. But the confrontation goes terribly wrong. What happened to Betsy? And why did she confront the potential robber in her room all by The previous day, Betsy enjoys people watching. In this case, a passenger named Kevin's drunken behavior to his server and his wife Deidre weigh heavily on her mind. Kevin's behavior continues to get worse as the afternoon goes on. There is one thing that Betsy can't stand, and that's a bully.
The great thing about Betsy is she's not someone who's going to stay silent when there's wrongdoing. She's going to stand up for the crew when they can't stand up for themselves, which is great, but it also could potentially put her at risk.
Betsy suggests to the server she should let her manager know what has been happening and thinks Kevin should be cut off from consuming any more alcohol.
A lot of people tend to overindulge on cruise ships, both with food and with alcohol. It's just too easy to drink too much on cruise ships. And when that happens, some personalities don't take it too well. They're going to be rude to each other, to the staff, to the crew, to people working on the cruise ship, as well as other passengers.
What no one knows about Kevin is that he is severely in debt. Far more in debt than his wife Deidre realizes. He grabs Betsy's hand, noticing how valuable her ring is.
One of the first rules about traveling is you're not supposed to wear valuable jewelry because it can make you a target. It can make people think that you have a lot of money, whether or not you do. This is exactly what's happening with Kevin and Betsy right now. Kevin is in deep debt. He's looking for a way out. He's feeling more and more desperate, and he notices a woman on the cruise ship traveling alone who seems to be wearing a lot of expensive jewelry.
As is often the case with bad behavior, the response is typically anger and not apologies. As Betsy heads back to her cabin, she doesn't notice someone keeping an eye on her. Later that night, a robbery ensues, but Betsy's confrontation with the perpetrator escalates the situation, leading to a struggle. Betsy's knocked to the ground. Betsy tries to feel around for her phone or a weapon without the person in the cabin noticing she is moving. Not only has Betsy come face to face with the robber, but also stares in the face of her killer. "55-year-old retired schoolteacher Betsy Mayer is on her first extended vacation without her husband and 2 daughters. She has decided to take a 7-day cruise before a family reunion in Cleveland. It's the perfect opportunity to spend some time thinking about a new career. But this pleasure cruise on the Great Lakes has turned into something far more than what Betsy bargained for. As the day maid enters the cabin, it's almost as if the night before never took place. Everything is nearly as Betsy left it. Meanwhile, Betsy still has several days left on her cruise before she promised she would be in touch with her husband, Bart. While he wants to respect her wishes, he has the nagging feeling that something's wrong.
Sometimes when people have been together a long time, you know each other so well that you can sometimes sense when something isn't right with the other person. And I think that's what's happening with Bart right now. He's just getting a sense that something's not right with his wife. In Bart's case, since he's a police officer, this is heightened to the extreme. So he's very upset when he doesn't hear from his wife. Even though they have this pact that they're not supposed to be in communication, he just needs to reach out. He has a feeling that something is wrong.
Finally, Bart decides to give in and text Betsy with a simple, "How are things?" Little does he realize how horribly wrong things have gone. Meanwhile, a fisherman makes a gruesome discovery on the shore of Lake Erie. A body has washed ashore.
Typically, bodies that are located in a body of water present difficulties in terms of investigative value. Evidence is often washed away. Identification of that person becomes difficult depending on the state of decomposition. Even obtaining something like fingerprints becomes much more difficult.
The possibility of this being Betsy is very likely.
Hopefully, the person that washed up, the body, has some sort of identifying mark that the cops can start with, whether it's a tattoo, a scar, a birthmark. Maybe their fingerprints are entered into some kind of database. Maybe the dental work can help. But it's a very tough job to start with a body trying to figure out where they came from and who they are.
Although the body lacks identifying marks or documents that would indicate whose body this is.
Typically, anybody that's been fingerprinted for any reason in the United States, those fingerprints are kept on file on a national database, can be searchable. That information is typically available to police agencies across the country, so it's a very important database and can be used to search fingerprints or names.
Searching through the missing persons records can be an exhausting and heartbreaking exercise. So far, the body of the woman who washes ashore is yet to be identified. And so far, nobody has noticed anything amiss aboard the ship. Its size and the fact that Betsy wasn't traveling with anyone means her disappearance could go unnoticed for some time. But the maid or any other crew member could assume she is on deck, and the dinner crowd would think she's eating in her cabin, or perhaps at a different hour. Back at home, Bart's unanswered text message is making him more nervous by the minute. And it takes all of Bart's willpower to join in a fun card game with his daughters and not show his worry.
I have a specific memory of my dad talking to Mr. Meyer over the fence, and I remember Mr. Meyer saying that he feels like something is not right.
It's another beautiful day on Lake Erie, but the scene in Betsy's cabin remains nearly identical to the day before. While most of the objects in Betsy's cabin don't appear to be used the last couple days, the maids have a busy schedule to stick to and not a lot of time to think about other things. Meanwhile, the autopsy doesn't reveal who the victim is, thus remaining a Jane Doe. The medical examiner does reveal a new piece of evidence, stating there is water in the lungs, indicating this woman died via drowning.
Falling from a cruise ship obviously involves falling from a substantial height. And that fall, a person hitting the water, would generate fairly severe injuries. A person could lose consciousness, they can suffer broken bones. So if they don't die from the fall, the chances are that they're going to be unconscious and would ultimately drown.
Some of Betsy's dining companions are finally getting concerned for her whereabouts. The steward is persuaded to open Betsy's cabin by the concerned passengers. But when they arrive, nothing seems wrong or out of place in the room to ship personnel. Betsy is not there, but could be off joining passengers on another deck level.
Cruise ships are enormous structures. They hold a lot of people, thousands of people, between the passengers and the crew, and there are all kinds of nooks and crannies. So it's not difficult to get lost on a cruise ship. It's difficult to start a search. It's difficult to locate a person that perhaps doesn't want to be found. It's difficult to locate a person that's no longer on the cruise ship. It's difficult to determine that they've left the cruise ship.
Meanwhile, Betsy's husband, Bart, decides to reach out to the cruise line and see if he can get a hold of her on board.
Everyone knows that horrible feeling when you're waiting for a phone call that doesn't come, or you're waiting for a text message that doesn't come. No matter how busy you are, it's always at the back of your head just bothering you.
He can't help but feel that something's wrong. Hopefully, getting in touch with the cruise ship will show him his fears are misplaced. Betsy Mayer is enjoying some time to herself on a 7-day cruise of the Great Lakes. With the exception of some unwanted attention, the cruise is going fine, until she discovers some of her jewelry is stolen from her cabin. Determined to take care of matters herself, Betsy tries to find out who the thief is on her own. But the confrontation doesn't go as expected, and Betsy is knocked unconscious. The last person to see Betsy alive is the thief, and it has now been over 48 hours since any of the other passengers or crew have seen her, and over a week since she's made contact with home. Meanwhile, a body has washed up on a nearby beach, and there is still no ID on it or any missing persons report that match in the area. Detectives realize someone is looking for answers to this Jane Doe. Bart's call to the cruise line about Betsy has been forwarded to the ship and delivered to the captain.
When you're out at sea, the only way to get anything done is to have one person in charge and have the ultimate authority. The ship can't go in two directions at once. It has to be directed by one person. Typically, that's the captain. So the captain has the ultimate authority on a cruise ship, dating back to ancient maritime law. They're the ones that dictate what happens, when it happens, and how it's going to happen.
A call is put out over the cruise ship speakers for Betsy to report to the main office. It's assumed she's still on board and will report to a crew member shortly. Another exploration of the cabin turns up something peculiar. The day maid notes how meticulous Betsy is about what she wore. She notes 2 mismatched shoes sitting on the bed. This seems out of character for her. The captain does a thorough search of the cabin, and it's only a matter of time before they realize that all of Betsy's jewelry is missing. He does find a single pearl under a nearby chair. As of yet, the captain is not too worried. He's been down this road before, only to have the missing person turn up. Perhaps she's been dining elsewhere on board, or spending time in another cabin with some new friends. The captain orders that Betsy be paged to come to the hospitality desk immediately. He also requests to speak to Amanda Wilson, the night maid, who the steward said was seen in the cabin the previous night. The night maid states that she has no idea where Betsy could be. She suggests the captain should speak with the dinner companion she saw Betsy with the night she was seen on the ship. Is it possible foul play occurred between Betsy and her dining companion, leading to her disappearance? The man Betsy felt was following her on board the ship Did her rebuff of his request to spend time with her on board drive him to harm her? One thing is certain. The captain is interested in speaking with him about the last time he saw Betsy.
Sometimes people don't deal very well with rejection. That's a given. But there's some people, especially men, that just, it becomes a personal vendetta with them, that their ego is hurt and they just need to seek revenge on the person who rejected them. Obviously, these are very troubled people.
Is it possible that moments after she rejects him, Anthony throws Betsy overboard, sending her over the rail into the waters below?
The notion of a homicide is complex, and they happen for multiple reasons. And those reasons are reflected in the different types of charges that we see. Premeditated homicide reflects that a person has planned to kill someone. A second-degree murder that we often hear about is where somebody intends for someone else to die, but it happens on the spur of a moment out of an emotional response. And then there's the instances where somebody dies as a result of an action of another person where that person may not have intended for the victim to die. That's where you see charges like manslaughter come into effect.
On board the ship, rumor is rife as to what happened to Betsy. Even though she said she was happily married, some of her dinner companions suspect she might be spending her time with another man. Others think she left the ship early at one of the stops without telling anyone. No one thinks of murder. Betsy Mayer is missing, and her cruise ship is due at its final destination in Cleveland. Now rife with rumors, the ship is abuzz with theories of where Betsy is and what ultimately happened to her. Is foul play the reason behind her disappearance? Or was she in the wrong place at the wrong time in a robbery gone awry? Meanwhile, husband Bart decides to fly to Cleveland and meet the ship rather than wait to hear if Betsy's found. He tells his daughters their mother is sick and he wants to go be with her, not wanting to scare them with any unproven details.
So Bart, as their father, does the best he knows how to do, which he tries to protect them by not telling them what he really believes, that something bad has happened to their mother.
As a member of law enforcement, Bart knows it's critical to get the police involved immediately. He wants to ensure the ship and crew are taking Betsy's disappearance seriously and asks for an investigation as soon as the ship docks. To ensure the investigation occurs right away, the detective calls the ship to let them know officers will be meeting them when it docks the next morning. He has also requested a passenger and crew manifest so they can run the names, checking for anyone on board with a criminal record.
NCIC is the National Crime Information Center. It's a repository for things like a person's fingerprints or other criminal history. So NCIC is available to law enforcement agencies both within the United States and internationally, so that people who may come into contact with the various agencies can be searched to see if they do have a criminal background.
In the case of missing persons and Jane and John Doe, law enforcement will share the information with other agencies in case the person is not from the area or has traveled outside the area to another jurisdiction. Theories begin to surface of who could have killed Betsy. Was it Amanda Wilson, the night maid? A 27-year-old born and raised in Cleveland. She has used numerous aliases in the past, and has a history of petty crimes, such as shoplifting, passing bad checks, and forgery. But so far, nothing of a violent nature.
So not everybody has a criminal history, obviously. But for somebody that does have a criminal history, that is kept as a record and it's available for law enforcement to search. It's also available for different companies to search their employees. Often people would have to submit records of any past criminal activity to a potential employer to show that they are or are not a liability in the course of their employment.
On the night of her disappearance, Betsy films someone robbing her cabin and plans to catch whoever it is in action and present the evidence to the captain of the ship. Perhaps it is not what Amanda Wilson had planned or even anticipated. Her reflexes react instantly when Betsy jumps out at her, and instinctively her first thought is to fight and get away. If it was Amanda, it may never have been her intention to hurt Betsy, let alone kill her. But that does not stop the maid from taking advantage of the situation, robbing Betsy of her belongings and tossing her cell phone overboard. Another possible scenario is that she was killed by Anthony Harrison. After Betsy turned him down, he had decided to charm another woman traveling without a husband. In fact, his alibi checks out. He did spend his nights with her. And then there were reports of Betsy's clashes with Kevin. Kevin's temper might have finally erupted, completely out of control. But could Betsy be on the receiving end of Kevin's temper? Was an inebriated Kevin to blame, angry that he was cut off from having alcohol served to him? At first, Kevin has no idea what transpires. But is it possible his drunken state makes the unthinkable happen? Is it possible Deidre tried to connect with Betsy after her husband Kevin's drunken display in public? Was she seeking advice or confiding in her about the debt the couple has racked up recently? Is this scenario even plausible with how much alcohol Kevin consumed that night?
Presence of alcohol in a person's system definitely affects their reliability. Their perception of what's going on becomes clouded. And then when they sober up later, it's difficult to know whether what they're telling you is an actual memory or something maybe as a result of the fog of the drunkenness, so to speak.
Perhaps Deidre takes charge in the aftermath, helping Kevin, with Betsy in no condition to try and escape them both. Meanwhile, Bart arrives to the Cleveland PD. To his horror, Bart identifies Betsy from the morgue photo. It was the last thing he expected upon his arrival. He asks about Betsy's injuries and if anything was found with her, to which he learns she was without her rings. The detective sends a car to bring in Amanda Wilson. Her criminal past thefts make her a prime person of interest in the death of Betsy Mayer. Bart calls his daughters back home in Alaska to tell them their mother has died. He's worried they might find out on the news instead.
The day the family got the call, my parents rushed over, and I can remember that we were all just devastated because how could somebody so bright and just a wonderful person have this happen to them.
Police, meanwhile, learn that Kevin has a solid alibi. During the night of Betsy's disappearance, he spent time in the ship's infirmary, nursing not just a bad hangover, but a laceration to the back of his head from falling over drunk in his cabin while arguing with Deidre. Scared that her husband was seriously hurt, Deidre had called the ship's doctor, whose incident report confirms the couple's whereabouts at the time of Betsy's disappearance. Now that the detective investigating Betsy's disappearance is aware that her 3 very expensive diamond rings are missing, he has arranged to have the night maid, Amanda Wilson, picked up from the ship and brought in for questioning. Amanda denies knowing anything about what has happened to Betsy, but further investigation reveals she isn't telling the whole truth. Betsy's rings are found in Amanda's apartment, out in the open, as though she was confident she would never be a suspect. It's what the police need to hold Amanda and place her under arrest. Surprisingly, they get an immediate admission out of her. Amanda never meant to kill Betsy, but she admits the robbery went bad, and she panicked when she threw Betsy's body overboard.
It doesn't happen very often where somebody so easily just spills the beans, so to speak, or admits their involvement in such a crime. Typically, it's a huge relief, and you can see that burden being lifted off a person's shoulders when they finally come clean about having murdered somebody. But it doesn't happen very often where a person readily admits to killing someone, unless there are what I would describe, as severe psychological issues. So I would imagine to get that off your chest, even knowing that you've killed someone, it's got to provide some relief.
I know it was her dream to take a vacation like this. I just wish it hadn't turned out like that.